I'm Marina, and my entire history as a woman is one of resistance. Sometimes I like to think of myself at 8 or 9 years old like a little bollard, just stood there, resisting, refusing to move, refusing to bow to pressure. When I was 6, I did something very unusual, which is that I moved with my family from behind the Iron Curtain to the free world, to Israel. But you couldn't just hop on a plane, an EasyJet out of Moscow back in the 70s. You had to fly to one of very few authorized locations and then fly onwards from there. And in our case, it was Vienna. So we flew via Vienna. And we arrived in Vienna on Friday afternoon. And that is the Jewish Sabbath. It's Saturday. So no flights were leaving for Israel. And we had to stay the weekend in the Israeli embassy in Vienna. And that evening there was a Shabbat meal, a Friday night meal. Everybody sat around the table, and all the men were given these little cardboard hats to wear, right? And I was like, I want a little hat. And everybody was like, no, you can't have a little hat. Little hats are only for boys. And according to my mother, I stood on a chair in the middle of this festive meal with a room full of strangers I didn't know. And I refused to sit down until they gave me a little hat, because I just refused to accept that anything could be for boys and not for me. It seemed completely unreasonable to me. I didn't understand. They were not able to justify their reasons in a way that I thought was cogent. And therefore, I did not accept their authority. And apparently the only way they could shut me up was give me a little hat. And that's pretty much like the history of my life. Pretty soon after that, so age probably 7 or 10, the violent pushback began, right? So you stand up for yourself too much as a little girl. You want to be treated with respect as a little girl. You want people to only touch you when you say they can as a little girl. The reaction is pretty violent. I think we very much underestimate the amount of fear that we put little girls under in order to turn them into little girls that are made of sugar and spice and everything nice. We basically terrify all the slugs and snails out of them. And so the bullying and the boys refusing to let me play football with them and all of that stuff, that arrived pretty quickly. And then as I grew older, that resistance, that pushback, that kind of refusal to accept that I am as good as I say I am as worthy as I say I am, that I'm as worthy as men or as boys, took on a sexual nature. Because that's what boys do. That's what we teach them to do. To menace girls sexually. That's the easiest control mechanism available to them. They've always done it, and they are still doing it today. And so, again, my sort of reaction to that was to lean in, to lean into my rebellion, to lean into my resistance. And I expressed that in all sorts of ways. Many of them were pretty unhealthy. I've had some experiences that I don't particularly want to talk about, but they would be pretty triggering if I did talk about them. So, so it was a very active kind of battle, right? Between me on one side, wanting to be explained to, wanting a good reason why these people were saying I can't do that, or I'm not good enough at that, or I'm not as worthy as so-and-so. And I should mention parenthetically, I grew up in Jerusalem. So there are a lot of people, like this is a city where a lot of people of all colors and creeds are very dedicated to the proposition that women are not as good as, that women are less than, that women are impure, that women are unclean, that women are unworthy, that women are the source of all sin, that women should cover themselves, that women should hide themselves, that women should not be heard in public, that women should, so it was like all around me. And essentially my history was of active resistance to that in all kinds of ways, some of them more maladaptive than others. And one of the ways that I resisted was that I announced pretty early that I'm not going to have children, and I'm not going to get married, and I'm not going to do the things that women do, right? I'm not going to live the life that's expected of women. And of course, everybody told me that I'll change my mind, and when the time comes, you'll want children, and your biological clock will be ticking, and all of that sort of thing. And I never have changed my mind, so I'm going to be 50 this year, and I've not had children, and I don't regret that. But of course, that too is something that you have to actively resist to, right? People I think that if a woman is childless at my age, then she's either terribly unlucky because she's infertile, or she's terribly unlucky because no man wanted to fuck her, or something really really kind of bad has happened to her and she just forgot to get pregnant. Like she just went along and she just forgot to get pregnant at the correct time, and then she now has no kids. But that's not how that works. That not having children, actually, even in a society with contraception and with the semi-legal access to abortion and all of that kind of stuff, is actually the more active choice, right? You don't go along to get along. If you want to be in, long-term serious relationships with men, and you don't want to reproduce, and you don't want to be their the vessel of their genetic legacy, it's a battle. Like, it's an active thing that you have to keep pushing away. You have to keep pushing away at the culture. You have to keep pushing away at spiritual sources that are telling you that this is you and this is your fulfillment as a human being, that if a woman has not had children, that she's not complete, and so on. And then said the secular view is no better, because it's like, oh, well, evolution and the reproductive drive, and we're all here to pass our genes on, and so on and so forth. So it's not particularly better, if you can call it that, among people who don't profess a religion. So these have been very active kind of processes in my life. These have been very active campaigns in my life, right? And they are campaigns of one, and not ones that maybe influence a larger group of women. Like, I've not changed laws or started institutions or anything like that, but in myself, I have prioritized spending my energies on resistance movement of one. And that's kind of the dominant theme of my life. And that's how I see my womanhood. And I see my womanhood as an act of resistance. Essentially, me being me, with long gray hair and at 50, which is neither dyed nor tastefully cropped like Helen Mirren's and Judi Dench's. No shade, I love them, but that's an act of rebellion. Not having children, that's an act of rebellion. Telling people I'm 50, that's an act of rebellion. People expect you to be ashamed of that. Every time I tell somebody I'm turning 50 and I'm so happy and I'm going to be menopausal, their face changes. Like, that's not what you're supposed to say. That's not the script. So that was my childhood. That was my growth into my womanhood, was an act of resistance. Inhabiting my womanhood was an act of resistance. And growing older, even more disgracefully, is going to be another act of resistance. And I intend to enjoy every minute of it.